Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fat Dad Fishing Show. My name is Rich. I am back this week after taking a week off and joined with both Ed, owner of Captain Hank's Tackle, and John, owner of Greeley Custom Rods. Guys, how you doing?
Doing well, doing well. I am glad you are back.
John said that he's taken over. He told me I should just go for the next 6-7 weeks.
He can have it.
It's not easy, is it?
No, hell no.
We'll bring Tad on as a co-host.
Yeah, we'll bring Tad. Yeah, I'm sure we've got a whole bunch of people that would come on and co-host with all of us. So everyone, welcome. I'm glad to be back. It's tough to miss these. I have a lot of fun doing them, but my son is in his final year of soccer before he graduates from high school in, God, I think it's about a week, 2 weeks. And once he graduates, he was going to play soccer in college next year. He's opted not to do that. So down to the last few games. Actually, he just played his last game yesterday. So I'm now finished. So there's nothing that's going to pull me from a Monday except for work, which I do have a trip coming up that's going to pull me off of another one. So John or Ed, maybe get Tad in here to host that one. I want to say hi to everybody in the chat. We got Roadkill Crew, James Flynn, Participation Trophy, Andrew Hurdle, Crabbing and Fishing, Jack West, Brian Supermag. Guys, hello to all of you. Thanks for stopping by. We're going to talk about flounder this week. Such
Everyone's
an awesome
favorite
week for some people and not such a great week for other people. And you can tell by, if you're watching and not just listening to the podcast, the one who just took a drink might not be the one that's celebrating right now. So why don't we start off with John? John, you want to just give a quick rundown of what you got going on, and then we'll jump right into the fishing?
I got nothing going on, honestly. I'm just chilling back right now. It's kind of nice. No rod builds on deck. It's relaxing. So
Yeah.
Just worrying about this Saturday, trying to come up with the plan, and I'm really looking forward to talking about that tonight because it's going to kind of lay out my ideas and how I'm going to go about this weekend. So,
yeah, I think it'll be interesting to hear what the people watching and listening have to say about the plans for this week as well. It'll be interesting to see what everybody else is seeing as well. Ed, you got some stuff going on.
A couple things. I got a new mold, so that's going to be cool. It's basically a regular ball jig. It's a plain ball jig, no eyes, no nothing. So we're going to call them something to do with gumballs. I haven't come up with a full name yet, but they're just going to be solid colors, but they take a giant hook. So I got the mold does from quarter ounce all the way up to 1 ounce, and it does 5/8. I did have requests for those, so I made sure to get a mold that does them. But yeah, so they take a giant 5060 hook. So I'm looking forward to making some of those and getting them out. Other than that, just plugging away. I'm on vacation, so that's cool.
Yeah. Well, you're on vacation. I am not. I had to work today. I have to work all week. And for me, what do I have going on? Not a ton. It was nice to get out on the water on a good weather day this past weekend, and we'll talk about that in this show tonight, and to have the tackle, a small selection of tackle up on the website right now for people that want to buy certain things and support local businesses. It's on there. It's very limited in the amount of stuff that's on there, though. But there's some gulps, there's some reels, there's some Scotty mounts for kayaks and boats, and the one that I really wanted to highlight, and really the reason behind the entire addition of tackle to Fat Dad Fishing, is we have Navionics on there. So if you want Navionics, you got to buy the chip for it, and then you have to update it every year. But selling the Navionics chips on there, and anyone who's watched any videos or taken the course knows that I am 100% diehard. You got to use Navionics to give yourself the best shot, the best opportunity to catch those nice fish. And that's up there and available right now. And there's a link on the website for it. It's just up under shops. Just go to the tackle one. So I split it into two. So there's the apparel, like I'm wearing, like Ed's wearing, and then there's a separate link for tackles. So it's not all built out yet. Whoever makes the first order, please be patient. If there's an issue with it, I'm not a computer programmer. I don't develop websites for a living, but it appears to be up and running. So that's pretty cool, I think. So that's the news there. But what I really want to talk about is, man, flounder season. It started off, we were all out opening day, and we had that conversation, and it started off with just a whimper.
Yes, it did.
The water temperatures were down at about 52, if I recall, and we're still battling this freakish wind so far this year, but things changed this week. John, what did you notice about this week that you thought was the biggest change? Because along with that change, not only my own personal experience, but looking at tons of fishermen online that I know, everyone started catching this week pretty consistently.
Let's back up to last week. We're talking a week difference. So Friday last week, me and you go out.
Yeah.
Winds were supposed to be what? Northeast. They were east, 15 to 20 miles per hour. I'd say it was miserable out. It was cold, foggy. And then look at Saturday, 85 degrees, west winds 10 mile per hour, water temp. That's the biggest difference right now. Within a week, I think we went from 55 degrees. In some spots, I was reading 64, 65. We're talking almost a 10 degree bump.
It was 64 today.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. In certain spots, you're talking a 10 degree bump. So these fish are now active. It
actually got up to 69 degrees back in the flats when it was the real shallow parts that I was up in. I know you guys didn't dip up into the really shallow stuff on purpose too often. You were staying closer to the ridges. I was fishing further up into the flat. At 4.5 feet, it was around 69 degrees at the very top of the tide, as it was just switching to outgoing. So it had all the chance in the world to warm up. It was sunny. John, did you get burnt?
I actually kept racing back because I ran out of room on my kayak. I need the sunscreen. I need the sunscreen.
Yeah, you're out there on the water. Everyone's fishing, and you just hear from God only knows how far away, Tad, I need the sunscreen.
Hold on, all that junk you got on your kayak, and you didn't bring sunscreen?
I wasn't worried about that. I was worried about food and gulp.
Yeah. Well, and he even gave me the bug spray, which was good because the bugs were out in full force when we first launched. They were good throughout the day, but
so we're talking this past Saturday, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a nice day. Now, but to go back to that previous Friday, just to give it a comparison, and I actually went out on Saturday as well, which is a whole different story. It was all a matter, the weather. And, we can all harp on the weatherman and how inaccurate they are. That's not the point. The point is, it doesn't matter what they said. The conditions sucked. I mean, that wind was way too strong. It was wind against tide, and it was a strong tide and a strong wind. So it was bad. I mean, even coming in, it was blowing so hard across the sound that you're getting a full chop behind you, pushing you forward. And I'll tell you one thing, John, the crabbers and the clammers did not like us there.
No,
they did not like the kayaks. I've never seen so many evil stares and like get the hell away looks than I did that day.
You know what it is? It's because we were primarily fishing the same grounds that we were this past Saturday.
Yeah.
That we were last Friday. Nobody is out there on a weekday, and that's what it is. They were pissed that they seen someone out there on a weekday.
Yeah, they weren't happy, and they weren't happy with where you parked your truck.
Well, they can pound sand.
Now, you went out on Friday. Me and Mike ended up going out that Sunday, and completely different weather. We ended up the wind wasn't too awful bad; it was manageable. But we ended up putting together a 2-man limit, and we were throwing back overs. So
Yeah, I believe it. It was Saturday, so I went out Saturday again, and because I couldn't. Well, I was going to go with you, Ed, on Sunday, but my son had
right.
a soccer game, and so I was like, well, I got to go Saturday. It's going to rain, but I can deal with rain. So I went down. I did a 3-mile pedal, got to my spot, started fishing, pulled up a couple of shorts real quick, and then a crack of thunder, like God is pissed off at everybody, cracks right over my head. And I'm thinking, well, I'm 3 miles from the launch. This storm is, I mean, the lightning and the thunder hit at the same time. First rumble all morning. So I'm like, well, 3 miles. I got 4 carbon lightning rods sitting right behind my head. I got to go. And I had timed it so I could go with the current. So now I had to go 3 miles against the current all the way back in. So I only was out there for about an hour and a half total. So that was my experience. But I'll tell you what, I was feeling good about the day when I started. I mean, I think it was the second drop. I pulled up one just under 17, and I wasn't even to where I really wanted to be. I wanted to be in a certain spot at the top of the tide, and man, I would have been there too. It was kind of like on Saturday, this past week, John, where we did well. We were all hanging in one spot, and then right when it got towards the top of the tide, I said, okay, I'm moving, and I moved back, and it paid off.
Yeah. You know what, though? It goes back to, I told you, I like the incoming tide. I had nonstop action on the incoming tide. And again, I'm fishing more of the ridges, the deeper ridges on the incoming tide and working my way up into a shallow. And that's what was working for me on the incoming tide. I mean, granted, they were all shorts, but I think I lost count after 15 off that incoming.
And what were you using for bait? You were using gulps?
Yeah. And I had this discussion, and this is actually just something that I've noticed. Maybe other people may want to take this one in. We talk about using that shrimp for the top teaser. And I prefer the natural shrimp because it definitely has that grass shrimp color look to it.
Yeah.
I've never noticed, but the sardine grub is pretty much the same exact color. And when I put that on the bottom, they were hitting the bucktail actually over the shrimp.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I think it has a lot to do with that color. I saw that.
Yeah, you notice I almost knocked over the camera here. Almost.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I had to point it out.
I was like, whoa. So we're using that exclusively all day? Because I did not have that color on me. I did not use it at all.
I started off with glow,
yeah.
and they seemed very hesitant. And that's another thing, too. The bite throughout the day as it got warmer, they started hitting like a summertime fluke. With those water temperatures, they get a little more aggressive once it gets warmer. I was using the glow, and even with the water temp getting higher, they just wouldn't really, give it that head shake when they were trying to go after it. Put the sardine on, they pretty much hooked themselves. And some of the times I actually had them coming back a second hit. So,
I am pretty vocal. I prefer to use gulp all the time. And I was not having the success on the incoming that you were. I was catching the throwbacks, but they were very unimpressive throwbacks. They were like 15 3/4 up to 16 and a half. Like there was nothing even close.
I mean,
to that slot. And I was fishing the morning for the slots, because I knew where I wanted to be at the top of the tide. I had the spots. I had 3 spots I thought would hold big fish. And I was waiting for it to get to the right time because fishing there on the incoming was not going to be, it just wasn't going to work. So I had that plan. So I was like, all right, well, I got to get my 2 slots early. Man, for me, it was so difficult. I didn't even get close. You got close and Tad got close, right?
I think I had one at it was 17, but I was not going to chance it. I was like, just going to throw it back. And I think Tad had one at 16 3/4. He was right on the nose. I think at that time we were sitting about 7 to 10 feet deep.
Yeah.
And that goes back to, again, how I strategized on the incoming. The bait's going to start flowing up off the ridges up into the shallow to look for that warmer water. And that's what the Fluke were doing. They were starting to go up into the shallows.
Yeah.
And that's that's where we started finding the fish, working our way off those drop offs.
So you had a scared 17, right? So it's legal, but you're scared anyway. Because we all know that measurements change when you get it off of you, especially, well, let's say this. Anyone that fishes in a kayak knows that the measurements change, because it's not easy to get the right angle and the right lay of a fish when you're more worried about it jumping out off of the kayak back into the water. You don't want it to, if it's going to flop out, you don't want it to flop into the kayak, because then it's hitting a lot of angles and stuff that's in there. So yeah, I mean, when it's right on the border, I always get nervous and I just toss it back. I'm like, if I ever get caught with something, even if it's an honest mistake, there's nobody, I mean, nobody's ever going to watch this thing again.
You're a fraud.
Yeah, they're going to be like, you're a freaking fraud. I don't care about you. Glad you got caught.
We'll have the lynch mob coming down your street with pitchforks and torches.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so but it is something that you gotta be careful about. And I know Ray on opening day I think he probably had a half a dozen of those scared 17s, and he just tossed them right back. So, but what's interesting is I found my day was much more successful using killies.
Yeah,
I actually ended up abandoning the gulps for quite a large period of the day because I just wasn't getting the hits on it at all. But what was interesting is the amount of shrimp that these fluke were puking all over the boat. I mean, they were some nice size shrimp that they were. Yeah. I mean, you're talking 4-inch shrimp that they're, as soon as you bring them in, they're just throwing them up all over your lap, all over the kayak. I turned around and threw a couple of them on as just some dead bait to see if they would work. But man, I had a much better bite on the live killies.
Yeah, I know you, and I think Perry also had some killies too, if I'm not mistaken. Correct?
I threw him my my bucket after, so I brought the killies because I thought they produce better at this point in the season for the larger over slot fish. So in the morning, I didn't use them at all. When I was going for the slot, I was using the small gulps. And again, I wasn't really even getting close. And then once I made that move back to the spot where I thought the big ones would be sitting, that's where I switched over to the killies. And it worked. It did work for me.
Yeah.
I didn't use the squid, though. I had the squid, too. I didn't use it.
I got picked off, I think, by a couple bluefish with the squid. I had irregular bites. You're looking for fluke. I had irregular bites, and it was not there. It was gone.
I think they were weak fish, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but I didn't hear too many weak fish. The only person that came over the radio, I think, was Beestav. May have had a weak fish on, and I was marking some marks. Looked like striper marks, but I don't think it was striper. There was definitely
no, they were definitely striper, there were some large fish there. I was getting like the full arches in the spots where you would expect them to be holding. And I actually tried to avoid those areas. I did not want to catch a striper on the gear I had.
Well, that was the thing. I'm pretty sure I seen a thresher back there.
A thresher?
Saw jaws today.
Nice. I did see a tail come up in the back. And then a kid did have I don't know what kind of shark. I wasn't close enough to see it, but it was definitely a 6-foot shark.
It's probably a brown.
That's what I was thinking.
They're really common in the backwaters there.
Yeah. I've seen a thresher or two in the back, though. It would not shock me if I seen that correctly.
Yeah, well, they show up every once in a while. Was it last year? Wasn't there the one that was swimming around? Was it the Deauville?
I think so. Strathmere.
Yeah, the Deauville Inn.
Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
I think it was swimming around there, and they were videoing.
Yeah,
it didn't look healthy, though.
No, it was just whipping itself into the docks and everything.
Yeah.
It was causing chaos.
Well, the only thing I caught that wasn't a flounder, besides the two connected horseshoe crabs, was I actually caught a skate.
Okay.
I was so disappointed. That was my first fish of the day. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Got to be kidding me. And that was on gulp.
Now, I think when we started off on the day you went out towards the marina, and me and Tab went off to the left heading towards the hole.
Yep.
Like I said, instantly we were getting hits. Once I went around the corner up the channel, exactly where I thought we would start picking fish. Sure enough, we started catching them.
Yeah, so let's kind of go through why we all did what we did. I mean, Perry got there first, and he wanted to just get out on the water, and he wanted to hit a creek that was way down towards the inlet. So he just took off and went there. It's a good spot to go. Ed and I fished that area. I wanted to fish the structure right ahead of that bridge. So I spent a little bit of time in there, and I was probably following you guys by about a quarter of a mile. And I was trying to find the deep spots coming up into the shallows, and I wasn't getting a ton. I mean, I was getting some interest, but it just was not working for me. But you were actually having a lot more success on that incoming on the way in. And as a matter of fact, the spots where I mean, they were predictable spots. I was getting the action at a creek mouth and at points.
Yep.
You know, and I think you had your most success at that big point, right?
No, it was past the point going towards the second creek right before the hole. That usually whenever we fish that spot, period, that's where I have my most success.
Okay. So to clarify, so we have a big bend in the channel, which is a point.
Mm-hmm.
It drops off to about 20 feet. And then it comes up. There's a creek that then comes off to the right. So the bend is to the right. It's really a corner. It's like a 90-degree corner. So it's a true point. And then you have the depth is about 20 feet. And then it comes up to about 4 feet. It goes into a fairly decent sized creek. It's not a deep creek, but it's a fairly decent size. Did you fish up into that at all, or did you stay on the outside ahead of the structure?
I stayed outside of it on the incoming, and we'll come back to that once we loop back with the plan what happened.
Okay. All right, so you were having success starting deep and just going up the ledges. So you were going up the structure the entire way.
I'd say I was fishing 10 to 15 feet most of the day.
Okay. All right. Ed, how did that compare to when you were out the previous Monday or Sunday when you limited out?
We kind of started shallow and just stayed shallow, honestly. There was a little bit of structure where we were. We were up in Atlantic City, in some of the back creeks. So it was shallower, like 12 to 15 feet, I think, at the deepest. And there was we found this one trough, and they were all laying in there. So it's pretty cut and dry.
What was the trough on the outside of a curve?
Yeah, it was towards the outside.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm just trying to picture exactly where you were, because I know where you were generally, but I'm trying to think of where
the channel where we were starting. So the channel would run obviously straight down. It would hook up around, and then there was like a feeder creek that came in, almost like a T. So we would start probably 100 yards off that feeder creek and drift back. It was outgoing tide.
Gotcha.
I caught one on the incoming, a little bit different spot, similar depth. Caught one on the incoming. We fished slack, and then outgoing. And that outgoing is really when it turned on. I grabbed my second. I got both my slots first, and then I was fishing for the over. So, but those.
What were you using for bait?
I was using one of my special concoction bucktails, fluke tail, round head, not the big head, and gulp. It was white jerk shads. For some reason, they wanted white. Every other color I tried, nothing. It was white.
That's the problem with gulp. You got to keep trying them. You got participation trophy saying killies on a fluke rig or a bucktail.
They're minnows, not killies.
Well, they're called killies.
Minnows,
killies.
I've always known them as killies.
That's like a North Jersey Philly thing. I don't know.
Killies?
Yeah.
I think they
They've
call
always
them that
been
all the way
minnows.
down in Virginia. I
Yeah,
don't know. What the hell do I know? So participation trophy, I'll tell you what I did. I do not just fish a rig ever. I will not fish a rig for Fluke. It's always a bucktail. So I was putting the killies on the bottom bucktail, and I was not putting them on the teaser up top. I was putting a gulp up there. And I was catching a few up there on the gulp shrimp when I had that on there until I ran out of them. That's when I ended up putting the grass shrimp on there that I got out of the one.
yeah.
So, all right. A lot of people are saying minnows. Diesel is minnows.
We need to start a poll on
But
your
you know what?
page.
Andrew and L are both saying killies.
No, they said
Charlie's
minnows.
saying minnows. All right. I know it's a minnow trap, but it's some people call them mud minnows. Everybody knows what we're talking about. And then there is the question, how far from the inlet were we when we were fishing?
Not far.
Very close.
So yeah, you were very close. You were closer than we were. I would say we weren't all that close at all. We're about 2.5 miles, I believe.
You know what?
No, it's probably 3 miles. 3
Yeah,
plus.
you know what? I keep forgetting how far I made it down to the channel. I almost made it back to the launch from
On
last
the other
Friday.
side.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I went down the whole way. I worked that whole ICW. So
You were probably 4 plus. From the launch, we were 3 miles.
Yeah.
2.5 to 3 miles. So add another mile to that. So yeah, we're 3 to 4 miles back. So guys, they have spread out. They are back in the way back. They're in all of the channels. And I will tell you, they were very lethargic Saturday morning to me. They weren't, and when I say lethargic, it's not that they weren't biting. They weren't coming back. I was getting one bite, and if you didn't set it on that first bite, it was not coming back. Now on the outgoing, they were coming back, and they were coming back hard. So it wasn't just the little they bite it and you feel the movement, and then they drop it, and then you feel the movement and they drop it. They were slamming it. I mean, they were bending the rod every time that they hit it. But John, did you notice that in the morning, the hit once and leave?
the morning, I mean, it was a one hit and done, but it was a very aggressive one hit and done. It wasn't that slow, like, do I have something on there? I knew it was a fluke hit, but you had to set the hook.
Yeah.
The afternoon, like I said, I got less action in the afternoon. But when I did find the fish, you could tell it was bigger fish, and they were aggressive. They were coming back 2-3 times easy, no problem.
That's so funny. You had more bites than I did all day.
Like I said,
that's for sure.
If I'm thinking about it, I probably had 30 fish all day. Just about.
I was probably down in the low 20s in bites, and I probably boated 15.
Yeah.
14, maybe just under 15. Yeah. So you were definitely getting more hits. I'd like to just tell everybody that's because John thinks everything's a bite, and I'm more discerning. I know what a fish is.
I did lose a big fish, so we're not.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there were some nice size fish. There were definitely some nice size fish, and so Ed, you were catching in 12 to 15 feet.
Yes, sir.
The previous week. John, you were catching primarily in that same 12 to 8 feet, right?
12 to 15, anywhere from 8 to 15. I'm going to say
15.
It was a very wide window, but when we start talking about the outgoing, that's what's going to be a little more shocking.
Yeah. I was trying to keep in areas that were down to about 12 to 15 feet and came up to about 3 feet on the incoming. And that's where I was literally getting them all on the rise. There was very few, there were some places where I just wanted to drift across the deep part just because it didn't make sense to reel in and, try to get the thing. So I drift through 30. got a couple of small bites, but you could tell they were tiny fish. And I was like, well, it makes sense because the big fish aren't going to want to sit down at 30 feet right now. They're going to want to be in these other areas. And then I was catching the nicer ones. And I did catch some of those that were, as the day went on, that were closer to the 17. But man, it's weird. Am I the only one having trouble with the slot?
I think so.
You think I'm the only one?
Yeah, I caught both my slot. Both my slot fish came back to back. First two.
Man,
See, I'm not going to get into it. Never mind.
I like to think it's just because I'm not used to looking for slots. I mean, we used to hate that size fish.
That's the problem, and that's where I'm getting at. Is the fish that I caught that was my keeper was 18 and a quarter. You could have trimmed the tail and said it was a 17.99. This is again why I disagree with these regulations, but that's all I'm going to say about it.
That's illegal, John.
I won't do that, but I'm just saying there are bad apples out there.
Yeah, I think most aren't, though.
You would hope.
Yeah, well, okay. So, all right. So we're all in the similar areas. Now the temperatures to me were one of the big things. And again, I was switching to killies for the larger fish, and I can tell you that it turned out better for me. So what I did then was, as it got towards the top of the tide, I'm talking about the last 45 minutes of the incoming, that's where I switched and I went deep into the back. And I went into a creek mouth that was going to take me up literally into the flats. And I fished that drop off there right next to a sod bank. And again, it was just shorts. But then it came out into an area where it was literally a flat. I mean, there were just bait fish just getting picked off by birds left and right because it was so shallow. And I started fishing I guess it was down to 15 feet in the deepest spot, but it was a really narrow area that was deep. And I was just fishing those ledges the entire time. And that's where it turned on for me. And actually, that's where I got my best fish of the day. And I actually caught it in 4.5 feet of water. Now, I'm assuming that it was followed up the rise because it went real quick from 8 feet up to 4.5. And the kayak, when it hooked up, I looked at actually hooked up and immediately pulled the line across the bow and to the left side of the kayak. So I'm staring right at the fish finder at that point. It's like, wow, it's 4.5. Didn't think it was going to rise that quick. So I'm assuming it was at about 4.5 feet of water. The disappointing part for me was it was a 24-inch fish. It was a pretty beefy 24, and it was only like 4.5 feet deep. So the fight was the shortest fight I ever had. It was a little disappointing. It took some line, but I think part of that was the terrible reel I was using. Yeah, that's what I experienced. John, what was your thought at that time of the day? Now to set it for everybody, it's full sun. There's very little wind. I mean, at that point, the wind had actually stopped. We may have had 3 or 4 miles per hour out of the west, and it was warm, full sun. Yeah. What was your thought?
At that point, we knew the tide was changing right there because I'd say that was slack tide when you caught that. All right, just about. So my thought was I'm moving back to where I started, and I'm going to do exactly the way I did and fish exactly how I wanted to the whole day. So I started going back to the same exact creek where I started out getting fish in the morning. Now, my thought process is that's a choke point. You have all the warm water flowing out. You have the bait fish flowing out. But now, remember this, at that time, like you said, that's 18, 20 feet deep and goes up to a 4-foot creek. Now you're talking anywhere from 25 to 30 feet deep with that high tide. I caught multiple fish coming through that. I think we drifted that 4 or 5 times. Maybe caught 4 or 5 fish. All of them were like measurable fish in 25 feet of water. And that's what kind of shocked me was that the bigger fish were hanging out in the deep. But again, it's such a severe drop off; they have nowhere else to go if they're coming out of that creek. So,
Well, right, but they're also deep, but they're face into that hot water coming out. Hot
yes.
meaning 70-degree water coming out of
Yeah.
that shallow creek system. So I it makes sense. Where I caught that, it was a little bit more wide open, but if you take a look at the navionics in that spot, actually no, if you look at navionics, it's wrong.
It's dead wrong.
It's totally wrong. But if you go back there and chart it and do a few passes over it like we did, you will actually see that when I caught it, I was fishing an underwater point. So it came up to the 4.5 feet, but if I went another 25 yards, it dropped back down to 7 feet.
Yeah.
So it went up in that, there was a little bit of a current going over top. It was pulling the hot water from, the flat itself. It was going over that hump and down the other side. And I caught it down on the other side. So I was drifting up because the wind was pushing me up against the tide a little bit. So actually, I think I came over the back of it because it had just switched to outgoing when I hooked that thing.
Gotcha.
But it was weird. It was a weird. It was weird. I'll tell you guys, don't use reels that you don't like, because it was just. I'm getting rid of the
Runkle.
Yeah, it's a runkle. And again, I'm going to say this. I still owe them the video. They keep bugging me, but they're not going to like it. But I'll say this. If you want an introductory reel for a bait caster and you don't care about a flip and switch, it's okay for $50. It's probably okay. But I think that buying an Accurist or buying a Penn or buying a Daiwa, and spending twice as much is going to be more than twice as good. So, yeah, so that's my recommendation. But I want to show, for those that are watching, and sorry to the podcast people, wanted to kind of show you what some of the fish were. So this was Tad's.
No, that was Perry's.
Or I'm sorry, Perry's. That's right. That's Perry's. And we got to show the Creeley custom rod up top. And that one right there was, how big was this one? That was his 21.
No, that was his slot, I believe, is 17.5. He said he was going to take a picture with the fish he caught with the rod that he used.
Okay.
So
Those beautiful bucktails.
yes.
Yeah, that's a big head, right?
Yep.
Just so you know, I'm looking all the way across the room on a TV, so it's tough to see the details. Yeah, so actually, I'll tell everybody, Perry, who was out with us, had the best day as far as keeper fish. He had a clear slot at 17.5, and he had a clear over slot at, I think it was 21, which he got at the very end of the day. He ended up getting the last fish of the day, and then he and I both ended up losing getting snagged and losing our rigs, and we just looked at each other and were like, well, it's time to go home. So we just paddled back in. But he had a good day, so that was his. Here's mine right there. You can see that cheap. Look, that reel looks like it's from Kmart.
It is an awesome reel.
It is.
It's great.
That's a Creeley custom rod, and that is the big head jig, and that right there measured out at 24. I have pictures of it measuring at 24, so if people want to say it's not, or I was stretching it, I literally have tournament pictures where I entered it, so it's clear on the bump board with the measuring stick underneath it. And then we have John and Tad coming in with theirs. So what was yours? 17.5?
It was like 18.25.
I'm sorry, 18.25.
Yeah.
And what was his?
18.5, 18.75. We were both over, and it was, we'll take it. It was a keeper fish. So at least everyone in our crew went home with at least one keeper.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm stuck with just the one. To 18. I can catch a lot of fish. It's just I'm just struggling to get that size, which kind of pisses me off because last year I couldn't stop catching those. When I didn't want to, I was catching we wanted 18 and over last year. And when I was literally missing at 17 and 3/4, and I can't buy one so far this year. So, yeah. So Elle is making the comment here. She saw the entry in the tournament. I'm coming for it. Now, here's something for anyone who's doing a tournament. So this is the Amelia's Anglers one. So flounder is one of the categories, and L is at the top of the leaderboard. So I was like, well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to catch a whole bunch of flounder and I'm going to pass her. And you get to measure, I think it's your top 5 fish. I only measured the one because it was the only keeper. And stupid me, I only put in one. So she's twice the length so far, and I don't even think she has 5 fish in. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for me to catch her, but Elle right now is, at least as of last night, is winning the flounder division. So anyone going out this week, if you just want to have a little bit of fun, see if you can knock Elle off of the throne, do the Amelia's Anglers through Fishing Chaos. It's $50 towards the little girl who needs the liver transplant, and you get to have some fun, and hopefully we get to take on Heaven and Elle outdoors head to head and beat her, but it's not looking good for me at this moment. Not looking good at all. All right, so let's see. What's the plan for this upcoming week? All right, let's pretend there's no holiday. I don't want to hear about traffic and boats and all that stuff all over the place, because 90% of the people that watch this or listen to this are going no matter what. So with all that aside, Ed, what's your plan? What are you looking for this week when you hit the water?
Well, I went out today. I tried a new spot, and that proved to be unsuccessful. So tomorrow morning, the tides are kind of odd. Like we have a midday low, which isn't my favorite. So I'm gonna fish a couple holes. The way I launched the boat, there's a couple different places I can go. There's one spot that I launched that will, on an incoming tide, pull me towards land. I'll fish that and then wait for outgoing, and it'll pull me back out. So with the way the tides are now, I'm going to launch closer to land and let the tide take me out, fish slack, and then have it, push me in. So I'll be launching tomorrow. I'll be launching up in Absecon. So I'm going to give that a go and see what happens.
And
other
just,
than that,
so I miss it. You're taking the boat or you're taking the kayak?
The kayak. So excuse me.
Okay.
I interchange them. Yeah, kayak.
You can interchange them.
Gas is too expensive.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I'm good with the interchanging them. It's just I know you're taking the boat out at least once this week, so I wasn't sure which one you were talking about.
Yeah. And the boat, like the big boat, is a pain in the butt to do by myself. I don't really prefer it. We trailer it, so backing it in, getting it off the trailer, and leaving my truck on the ramp, everybody yelling at me, going by myself is a pain in the butt. So I just take the kayak. That's
much easier. Much easier. John, what are you looking for? You're going out Saturday, right?
Saturday, yes. I got Ted back on board. I think Perry's going to be joining me as well. I think you might, Ed, will talk off backstage. I know.
Oh, I'm going. What do you guys get me for my birthday?
Is it your birthday Saturday?
Yeah.
And it gets you onto an overslot.
Yeah.
I can do that myself.
I know.
Getting you a Happy Meal, buddy. I'm going down to Ventnor. I'm doing an early launch because my game plan is it's going to be high tide, I think, at 7:30 exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I might launch at like 5:30. I'm going to fish deep holes, a couple creeks leading into a flat, and then I'm going to work my way back down a channel. And that's going to be anywhere from 10 to 20 feet deep. And that's primarily where I've been seeing the fish. So that's where I want to be. And I think with the constant air temperature this week, I think I'll be able to make something happen.
So you're going to be looking a little bit deeper than you were this past weekend.
And like I said, my keeper was caught in 25 feet, so
Yeah.
12 to 20 feet, I'm comfortable with it.
Gotcha. So my plan is to go with all of you guys on Saturday, but I'm not going at 5:30 in the morning. It's just too much. It's
For where you live and the drive that you have, I'd say you and Perry just meet up with us down there because you
I'd
guys
have to leave at 3 a.m. and
Why don't you
after
just-
working all week.
Why don't you come down Friday night?
I don't do sleepovers.
You can sleep in the
I'm
garage.
damn near 50.
I was gonna say I got a cot. You can just stay in the basement. Whatever.
Look at me. I don't sleep in cots. I won't be able to
Hey.
move the next day. I appreciate it though, but
The offer's there.
yeah, I do appreciate it. My thought is whether I can meet up with you guys or not, I'm still going to stick in with the shallow water, and I still want the outgoing, the top of the tide, and the outgoing. That water temperature being at 70. I mean, as soon as I saw that, I got real excited about it, and I kept asking Perry, "What temperature you got?" And we just kept verifying, like we both had the same temperature. It's up around 69 degrees, and once that's hitting in the 70s, and that incoming is still cold, that incoming is still coming in the 50s, and that outgoing is coming out in the 68, 70 degrees. That to me is like a trigger, and that's exactly what happened as soon as that switched around. And that hot water or that warmer water started hitting that other water on the outgoing. That's immediately when I got the fish. So I'm going to be looking similar areas. I don't foresee myself going back to the same spot, but I do see that I'm going to have the same strategy. So it'll be interesting to see which works. Something just fell in my garage around me. It's a little scary, but. That's what I'm going to do. Diesel's saying come down to North Wildwood this weekend.
That's a no.
It might. That doesn't really set up for the tides, though. If high tide is at 7:30, the launch location down there doesn't really set up for a kayak.
No.
Because I could be launching at 7. It gives me a half an hour to go a few miles.
I know we said let's not talk about boat traffic, but I am definitely not going down that way this weekend because of that.
Yeah.
Well, if we're going to the spot I'm thinking of, then there's going to be boat traffic.
Back in the channel where I go, only locals go back there. So you're talking 2-3 boats at max is all that I see. Maybe we'll see Frank Mahalik. I can yell at him, get out of my hall.
That's what she said. Sorry. I'll delete that for the podcast.
Yeah,
No, leave it in. Leave it in.
it's a little inappropriate.
A little inappropriate. All right.
But they could say it on national TV on The Office. So
That is true.
you can leave it.
All right. That's what she said. All right. Yeah. So to his point, though, for boat traffic, guys, everybody be careful out there if you're in a kayak, because this is when you start getting run over. It hasn't been that bad though so far this year, and there have been a lot of boats out. A lot of people are taking it. Well, actually, you know what? Maybe I just answered the question as to why. It's because it's fishermen out there. It's not the pleasure crafters.
Yeah, it's not the guys that have been out drinking all day and then get in the boat and
Right.
going home.
Right, and they go it's like hauling through. Although I have seen a couple of people just up on sandbars that they never should have hit. I mean, just clear, obvious, like 2 inches of water, and they've hit it full speed. I have seen a couple of those, but for the most part, I think it's been fishermen. They've been very respectful and actually on the correct side of markers in the areas that you're supposed to be on the correct side, and where it's deep enough. They've known that it's deep enough to go on the other side, and they've done it well. So that will change this weekend, though. It's all going to change. So, John, you actually may end up getting some traffic back there.
That's why I do the early launch and then end up where I end up. See
Yeah.
what happens. It's got to be better than what I dealt with on the outgoing tide where we were at. Because going back to safety, Tab was right there. I'd say probably 4 or 5 boats came hauling through there doing 25, 30 knots easy through that channel. I ended up on top of the side bank.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did you high side it?
It was close. It was close. I'm like, yeah, I need help. Help. I'm stuck. Tad's like, I can help you, but I don't know what I'm doing.
No, Tad shouldn't have been helping anybody in an emergency. It was his first, just so everybody knows, it was Tad's first time on his new kayak. So I'll just tell you, if you're out there your first time on a kayak, don't try to help anybody in a bad spot, because it's a good way to go over yourself. Just let them, if they're experienced, let them take care of it.
Did we ever show that video of me getting high-sided?
I don't know if we did.
I don't think we did.
I didn't see it.
Well, if you guys want to talk for a second, I'll see if I have it here. But it was it was a pretty interesting situation.
Yeah. So I mean,
I think that was the last TOG trip of the year, wasn't it?
It was. It was the last TOG trip. Yeah, nice cold water in Epseekin Inlet. You decided that you were going to sit on a jetty with your kayak.
So in Tad's defense, I mean, we talked on the phone afterwards, and of course my wife heard it too, so that was even better. Tad, yeah, I'm stuck. This is bad. He's like, I offered to help. I wasn't going to help because I didn't know what to do, and I just would have let you die. All right, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
There you go.
At least you're honest.
You know, Tad had a radio. He could have just used that to get somebody to help you. Well, there were so many people around. You were at like zero risk with your PFD and everything.
Yeah, no, there would have been help.
See, I knew I liked Diesel for a reason.
What's Diesel? Minnows. He's still all over it. I'm going to see Diesel throughout the season too, and I can just see it right now. I don't even know he's coming, and right behind me, I'm just going to hear a boat coming. I'm just going to hear, "Minnows, you fat guy." Yeah, I can't find the high side. I'm sorry.
Nah. Yeah, so, good time.
Yeah, anybody that's in a kayak, again, keep that in mind this weekend. Please be safe.
Bring your flags.
And you know, I like 5 or 6 people going. So anybody that wants to head out on the kayaks should just kind of like share it somewhere if you want company. I still think it would be awesome to go. Now I'm not doing it because I'm not going to be going back down on Sunday and Monday. But actually I was thinking Monday, but the winds don't look good. No. Wouldn't it be so much fun to show up outside of Karen's house with a full fleet of kayaks?
4th of July. I am planning 4th of July.
We need to get a cheap, like a beater kayak, and we can put a fireworks display on it.
Just throw
like a barge. We need a barge.
I got one. We're good.
We'll have to get Elle to come down for that one.
She doesn't do kayaks.
That's all right. She might for that. She might for that.
We could just all post up right in that channel. We'll anchor up. Like you said, set up a barge. That sounds like a good time.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely want to do it sometime. Elle already has fireworks too. So
I say I have a firework drawer in the garage here.
Elle, as long as you have a grill on board, that way we can throw you some food to cook it up first, because it's kind of difficult on a kayak. We're good.
That'd be hilarious if somebody can grill on the kayak.
So, yeah, this is hilarious. A lot of people are saying they want to bring their boat for the 4th of July party at Karen and Darren's. Karen and Darren don't know what's coming.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine if just and everyone like the old days back in the Delaware Bay, where you come out of the Cape May Canal, you can't see anything on the horizon, and all of a sudden you're in the middle of this city of boats where you can practically jump from one to the other. Everyone's just bailing flounder, and we have everybody just sitting right next to their party, their first annual Karen and Darren cotillion on the deck. And here we all are. John, you're gonna have to play your music, the American flag,
Kid Rock, dude, standing in the background.
Yeah. James, it's the same Karen from the video.
What's that?
So am I the only one that can do without Kid Rock?
I love Kid Rock.
Oh, he's so annoying.
Secretary of State.
I don't even know any of his songs, so I don't know.
He's
it's not because I'm old. It's just because I don't listen to them.
Diesel, I do believe their house is finished. I haven't made my way back down there yet, but I think it's done.
It'll be entertaining. Show them that they really don't own the water. All right, guys. So what if anything should we go over for more? I mean, let me just sum up my thing. I still think we're in the same pattern that we were this weekend, and we will be next weekend, which is really the beginning, the traditional beginning of the season. Look for going up into the flats, into the shallow areas. Look for the warmer water. And again, John, you and I are going to disagree on this one. I'm all about the outgoing, and but man, you proved it. You caught a ton of fish on the incoming, a ton of them.
It's a confidence thing. It goes back to, like you said, you got to be confident in what you're doing.
It could be, because even when I fished that 25-foot area that you and Tad were catching them in, I didn't get a touch. And when I went into that, I was like, there's no way I'm going to catch anything in here. But I fished it anyway, and I didn't get a tap. And it was probably because in my head, I'm thinking, I'm never going to get one. I probably was half-assing it somehow.
Tad will tell you he got railed by one, and I mean, it looked like it just swallowed the bait and spit it back out. The rod bent over so hard, and it just spit it instantly.
Yeah.
I mean, there was big fish in there. So, again, I think I'm just going to go back to with that incoming. I don't have too much time on the incoming tide on Saturday,
right,
but I want to give it a shot. So, I mean, at sunrise, that's when that outgoing is going to be happening. So I'll be working that channel most of the time.
Yeah. Here's an interesting question from Roadkill Crew. What about the night bite? Is there anything?
Yeah, are we going to test that theory or what?
Yeah. So I've mentioned before, I absolutely love fluke fishing at night. And we've been talking about doing it the past couple of weeks. And really the only reason that we haven't done it is the wind. I would prefer to do it from a kayak rather than from the bridges, because just to be honest, there's only a few bridges that I know that you can fish at night from the bridge and not get the police all over you. And I'm just at the point where I don't want to drive 2 hours just at the police that's on shift say, don't come back, because I only have one more place to try. And then if that doesn't pan out, then it's going to be like that thunderstorm last week. And I'm, 2.5 hours down, hour and a half fishing, and 2.5 hours back home. Just a waste of time and gas and money. And Ed and I were actually talking about going Wednesday night, and it just does not look good again. Now, maybe it changed since I looked last night, but it wasn't looking good. But there is absolutely no reason for anyone to not be catching fluke at night. And if you're smart about it, I'm gonna maintain this point. You should be able to catch them easier at night than you do during the day, because it's much easier to figure out where they're going to be, because they feed 24/7. They're not going to sleep at night. It's not like a tog. They're literally feeding all night.
Sokol saying he limited out the other night in the dark, and if you guys don't believe him, I truly believe him 100%. That's a guy that can definitely catch a fish.
I think Wednesday night's gonna be a night, Rich. I'm looking at the wind right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not gonna be perfect, but it'll be fishable. And if we launch the spot that I'm thinking, we'll be protected.
Okay. All right. So maybe we'll go out and put it to a test this week then. I'll just have to, I'm going into the office on Wednesday. I'll just throw the kayak in the truck and just go right from work, which is actually on the way to fishing. So it's actually better off. And as far as sea bass, I know neither of you have gone yet. Is anyone or either of you planning on heading out for some sea bass?
I want to, but I committed to fishing the Matthew B on the 11th with Don. So I don't think I'll be sea bass fishing this season.
Gotcha. I mean, the results look awesome.
Yeah, they look great.
They're pulling in those knuckleheads left and right. I mean, just beautiful size fish. I'm not going out anytime soon. I'm also going to fish the Matthew B. So I'm definitely for flounder at that point. I'm not going to look for the sea bass.
Is that the one in June we were talking about?
Yeah, the 11th.
Yeah, it's my son's birthday's the 12th. So
yeah. Yep, that's what we were talking about. So, yeah. All right. Well, I think that pretty well covers us, unless you guys have anything else you want to hit. Anyone has any questions? Same type of. Oh, let me just do this. James Flynn, real quick. Is it the same type of plan for? Oh, that's Andrew's answer. Sorry. Same type of plan for night as day. Is James' question. Andrew's answer is pretty good. Fish the edges of light that are formed around docks, and you'll catch fluke. I would say this. Just keep in mind, if you can find a lighted area that has deep shadows that border it. So bridges are really good. They give a really hard edge to the light. Docks can be really good. But just make sure you have current, because if you're like, for example, in the back bays of Stone Harbor that are not on the ICW and they just kind of like bow in like a horseshoe, 95% of those docks are not going to have any shot at having any fluke because there's no current that goes by. They just kind of flood in and flood out. But if you can find something that's got good lights on the intercoastal waterway, has some so that's, a dock is automatic structure, but if you can find a depth change there too and fish the edge of those lights, now fish into the black through the light and back into the black on the other side, that's going to be your best opportunity for them. And you'll catch them in the dark and in the light. So yeah, so that's what I would say for nighttime, but give it a try. And you don't have to use bait. You can use white, you can use pink, you can use black. They're going to see it and you're going to be able to catch them.
Roadkill put up a good question too. He's got spotlights on his canoes. Do you recommend lighting them up or to find stationary? I have an answer to this, but I want to see what you have to say.
I don't typically like to light the water unless I'm staying stationary. And here's the reason why. Well, see, I'm having a hard time answering it because it depends on what you're fishing for and what you're doing. I would not fish for flounder using lights off of a kayak or a canoe or a boat, because part of the reason that you want the lights is that's adding to their ambush, right? So they want to set up in a spot where they can sit, they can be unseen, and then the bait's going to be coming through the area. Well, the shadows next to those lights offer that ambush spot, right? And the fact that the light is there is what's going to draw the bait fish in, because they think it's safe, because they can see all around them, which doesn't make any sense to me, because that's where they all get eaten. You can just see it next to any dock in the world. All the bait fish gets hammered when it goes through the lights, but they do it anyway. Now, if you're moving, the flounder is never going to have that edge that it can just sit and wait. It's never going to be on the edge of that light in that shadow. So I wouldn't do it personally. I would find the stationary lights every time and fish the shadow lines around it. That's the key to me.
I would agree. I also find that when you light the water like that, it attracts the wrong type of creatures as well, toothy ones.
I was going to say, a lot of bluefish. If you're out in the ocean, you're going to attract a bunch of chubmack, stuff like that. The stuff that you're not looking for.
Around a dock, it's perfect though.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with anything. We used to have the lights down on our dock in Stone Harbor, and there was one night, I actually had the video for it. My brother laid down on the lower dock, and there was a dogfish swimming through. And he just reached down and grabbed it as it went by and caught it by hand twice. Different sharks coming through. Yeah, I mean, it brings everything through there. We've seen some real browns go through too, though. So it's not like you want to grab anything that goes through there, but
yeah, why not?
Yeah, worst thing that happens is a dogfish latches onto him. It's just going to scrape him up a bit, and I get to laugh. But you see a lot, and somebody was saying that they want to put the lights under the docks. I'll tell you one thing that's really interesting to try is the up lights that go on the bottom. So you don't have to just project down, but it sits on the bottom and it puts the green light straight up. Those work really well, and those are really good for striped bass. I don't know what they do for flounder, but they work really well for striped bass. Yeah, so just a thought there. All right, well, with that, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up. Really appreciate everybody stopping by. Again, keep an eye out for Ed's page. He's going to have his bubblegum jig heads coming out soon, whatever they're called. Gumball. gumball. Oh, my camera moved.
Rich
The
dropped his
gumball.
camera.
Yeah, the gumball things, and we also have some of the products up on my site as well. And we'll be back next week, and hopefully we'll be able to tell you about a very successful day. Would love to hear from you guys, see some pictures, some things that you caught, and just so you know, Evan and L, I'm coming for you in that tournament. I plan to be ahead of you by the end of next weekend. So I got a lot of work to do in just one day to do it, but gonna give it a go. So, all right, guys, thanks a lot. We'll catch you next week.
See you.
Later.
See you.